And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick here with Katie Greifeld, taking you through to that closing bell with a global simulcast. Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec join us right now. Welcome to our audiences across Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Radio, our partnership with YouTube here on a huge turnaround in financial markets with all of the major indices basically up at a minimum by 2% on the day.
Yeah, I've been thinking about you because I'm looking at the Russell 2000. It's actually up 3.7.
You're always thinking of me, aren't you, Carol?
Well, you know, it depends on the day.
It's not always good, though.
I do like you. 3.7% higher on the Russell 2000, and this average easily outpacing those other major equity averages for the week overall. So you can see where investors are really kind of moving on this Friday.
And on the S&P 500, a day like today where we see the S&P up more than 2%, it's actually its best day going back to May of last year. So that was sort of a post, quote unquote, Liberation Day rally. That's the kind of magnitude we're talking about today, Katie.
I'm surprised you didn't want to bring up Bitcoin, Tim, because, man, what a bounce back
I was saving it for you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Up 11% on the day. Of course, we were down 13% yesterday. But what's super fun about crypto, as you know well, is it's open all weekend. So we're going to get some really interesting trading in that low liquidity 2 days.
Yeah, kind of interesting that he didn't bring that up, considering he hosts an hour-long show.
Hour-long.
We just had a great conversation with Stacey Maria Ishmael about it. So,
All right. Well, we talk about this idea here, whether this is truly a risk on, back on, if you will, here. Obviously, Bitcoin back up to that 70,000 level, but still seeing a bid into gold, silver, and some of the things that traditionally would be sort of interpreted as being a bit more defensive in posture. Nevertheless, we get the closing bells here in New York. And it does look like a pretty big turnaround from where we were over the last few days. The Dow Jones Industrial Average trading above 50,000 for the first time in history, adding 1,200 points, or about 2.5%. That's going to be good enough for a record high. The S&P 500 up more than 130 points, or 2% on the day. The NASDAQ Composite up about 2.2% on the day. And when you look at the small and mid-cap space, I just want to go through this. Dow Transports closing at a record high. S&P 400 mid-caps up 3% at a record high. And the Russell 2000, Carol, adding 3.6% here on the day.
Yeah, mega outperformance when it comes to those small cap names. I'm going to go, though, back to the S&P 500 because you really saw some broad-based buying by the time we wrapped up on this Friday. The S&P 500, Katie, 400 names gaining ground on this Friday, 102 to the downside, 1 unchanged.
Yeah, let's take a look at the circle, which shows us what the sectors did on the day. And, man, information technology is bright green, higher by 4% somehow, which is truly amazing. Industrials, financials also having a good day. In terms of what didn't perform, consumer discretionary down by about 0.7%. Communication services was your biggest loser on the day, off by about 1.5%. A lot of those losses came from Alphabet, which finished this Friday about 2.5% lower.
All right, let me get to some of the individual gainers. There was a lot to choose from. I'm going to start with Robinhood, #1 gainer in the S&P 500, everybody. Finishing the day just shy of a 14% gain. Of course, closely tied to the crypto market, as you can buy crypto on the platform. Sure, so shares surging as we saw, kind of anything to do with the crypto trade, really bouncing back today. And I should point, and this is even, late yesterday after the close, Robinhood, their market price target was cut to $130 a share from $155 by Truist Securities. Still bullish on the fintech company despite the weaker cryptocurrency market backdrop. I wonder if he doesn't like that call. I don't know. But anyway, he made that call, and we did see Robinhood certainly an outperformer in today's session. Let's go on over to Strategy. Really some outperformance there as well. That company up pretty much closing at its highs of the session, up 26%. The Bitcoin Treasury Company reported a $12.4 billion fourth quarter net loss, driven by that decline that we've seen in the crypto prices. Analysts do expect the company can withstand further downturn due to its cash reserves. So that was good. And so, again, that crypto trade impacting this one. Michael Saylor, also of the company, saying that the margin calls are no margin calls, I should say, on the company. So some optimism there. And then thank you, Tim, for this one. Under Armour, UA is the ticker, finishing too at its highs of the session, up more than 19%. This stock is up about 50% year to date. 20%, though, of the float is short. The company surprised investors with a quarterly profit. Revenue also slightly above the consensus estimate, and management boosted its adjusted EPS estimate. So some outperformance. There's a lot I could have done. So, Romaine, do not add to the list.
Hey, pop quiz. What was the best performing large cap stock this week?
Oh, my God.
Lumentum, light, up 40 1% here, of course, off the back of those earnings that it had the other day.
Nice.
So I'm not adding, just adding context. Because you know what, Carol Massar?
What?
Context changes everything.
It totally does.
Yeah.
Totally does.
Always saying that.
Thank
How
you for
about
that.
some decliners for some context on stocks that move the other way? We got to start with Amazon, down 5.6% today. This after the company announced plans to spend $200 billion this year on data centers, chips, and other equipment. Andy Jassy is bullish. He says it's going to go toward the company's AWS. Most of that spending will be for AI workloads. Shares fell earlier by as much as 10%, but paired those losses to close down by 5.6%. The worst performer on a percentage basis in the S&P 500, Molina Healthcare. Shares just crumbled today. This after the company forecast 2026 profit that was less than half of what Wall Street expected. This due to higher medical costs, insufficient government repayments, lost more than a quarter of its market cap today. It's pulling out of the federal government's Medicare Advantage Part D program for 2027. It expects its Obamacare enrollment and total premium revenue to drop by more than 50% this year. And finally, Stellantis, the worst day ever for this company. Shares fell by 24%. The company's CEO, Antonio Filoso.
Can you tell people what Stellantis is? Because
Yeah,
this is probably one of
sorry.
the worst rebranding exercises.
The maker
agree.
of Jeep,
Jeep, iconic
Chrysler.
name. Chrysler, everyone
Yeah.
knows. But Stellantis, go ahead.
Yeah, so Stellantis, it's
That's my BBO column for
Okay,
I always think praying mantis. I think it's like a bug.
okay.
Just saying.
Whatever you guys need to remember it, but it's been a public company since going back to 2014. And it's having the same problem that some of the other large auto manufacturers have had when it comes to EVs. 22.2 billion euros in charges, much of were linked to unwinding Carlos Tavares' bets on EVs that were destined to be unprofitable. Carlos Tavares has been out of the company for more than a year, and they're still working to unwind some of those bets. Once again, Stellantis, the maker of Jeep, Chrysler, and more, falling by close to 24%.
And I'll just add, too, I just want to point out, software stocks did rebound on the day, but still down for a fourth straight week. All of the big names here are still sliding on a weekly basis, including Oracle and the like. Let's take a quick look here at what's been going on in the debt markets. We saw yields actually rise on the day, up about 4 basis points on the shorter end of the curve, a little bit less on the longer end of the curve. But we should point out, on a weekly basis, it was still to the downside all across the curve. In fact, a parallel move down here. So keep an eye on that. That's going to be a big part of the story, particularly as we get into next month and some of the freshen up economic data.
Just making sure you guys have your long johns for the weekend, because it's going to be...
My long johns?
Yeah, just in case.
Is it going to be cold?
Yeah, like 5 degrees tomorrow, the low.
I feel like we're used to that. You know, we're acclimated. It's been frozen for so long.
Are we?